Hey, what is up guys? Welcome to my channel, The Focused Millennial, your one-stop shop for high-quality leadership and entrepreneurship content that is both fresh and relevant. So in today's video, we did things a little bit differently. I posted a poll on Instagram to ask you guys what topic you want me to address next here on this channel. And you guys voted and said that you wanted to know a little bit more about the funding landscape. Where are the places that you can go to get funding, and when is the right time to consider these options. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. I'm going to explain each of the various types of funding available to you. I'm going to give you a pro and a con of each, and also advise you on the right time. So if you want to participate in polls like this, where we talk about the next topics, go to my Instagram, follow my account, and keep your eyes peeled for my Insta stories. And there you can participate in the polls. But all right, no more chit chat. Let's get it. Okay, so number one, the first form of funding is called friends and family. Now, this is very self-explanatory. It's essentially going to your friends, your family, and people in your personal network and asking them to back your idea with some funding. Now, the benefit of this is that because it's people that you know, they can essentially vouch for the fact that you're a reasonable person, you're decent, you are, competent and all of these things. So it really de-risks, that aspect of the decision to invest in you. Another benefit is that it's very easy to get these over the line, provided that you have the kind of network that has resources to be able to do this. And also the terms are usually very favorable and lenient towards the entrepreneur because it's people that you know. But obviously the con behind that is that, this kind of thing can really strain, personal relationships. Wherever money is involved, there's always the possibility of that happening. And you don't want to really strain, your family relationships and those with your friends. So you have to tread carefully with this form of investment. And when it becomes available, or when you should consider it, you can consider this almost immediately from the time when you actually get the idea and you've given it a bit of thought and you actually understand it. Now, I think it's very responsible to always give your idea a lot of thought before you consider this, because once again, you are dealing with your close family members and friends' money. Okay, so number two, the second form of funding are startup competitions. Now, startup competitions are these competitions in which you usually have to submit your idea in the form of an application. And then if that is successful and your application meets the bare minimum criteria, you get taken to the next phase, which is usually the final phase, where you have to pitch your idea to a panel of judges. Now, your idea is always competing against other ideas and other passionate entrepreneurs like yourself. So the benefit of winning a startup competition is that it affords you free money in the form of a grant. And on top of the money that you get, that doesn't actually have any obligation for you to pay back, nor does it affect your shareholding in any way. The beauty of it is that it's a form of validation. It's not a very strong form of validation, but it does validate your idea nonetheless, because your idea usually is pitched to a panel of judges that are quite smart and sharp people. So if you're able to convince them about what you're doing, it usually says a lot about how much thought that you've given into the idea. And then the third benefit of this kind of funding is that it actually gives you a lot of exposure as well. When you win a startup competition, there's usually press releases and all these things that go out there that speak about your idea and how much you want and all of those details. So it can be quite awesome. But the downside of these kind of startup competitions is that quite often it leads entrepreneurs to feel very disillusioned and trapped in this competition phase, where you just want to hop from one competition to another, because you really love the momentum that it gives you, and you love the feeling of winning and your idea being this winner, and it can become a thing that really limits you from going to the next phase of your business, which is actually getting customers. So from that perspective, it can be quite a distraction, and it will distract you from doing the things that are most important and the high level validation that you actually require from your users. So startup competitions, once again, are available to you in the early stages of your business. They don't require you to have done too much on the ground, but they do require you to understand the problem very intimately and be able to articulate that in a problem statement. It also requires you to be able to explain your offering or your value proposition in a way that is easily understandable, because you are pitching to a panel of judges that have never heard of your idea before. But it is available to you in the early stages. So you can find out about startup competitions on various websites that are available. In South Africa, the two biggest websites are VENTUREBURN and Disrupt Africa. Just Google VENTUREBURN Disrupt Africa and you'll see that there's a whole bunch of startup competitions that are posted here, both locally but also in other parts of Africa that you can enter quite easily. The third form of funding are government grants. Now, these are very similar to startup competitions in the sense that you usually have to apply for them, and then there's a whole pool of applications that the government funding agency will decide from in terms of who to fund. Now, the benefit of these is that once again you have access to money that you don't have to pay back with any interest rate or anything like that. It doesn't affect your shareholding in any way. It's just a pure grant for you to actually implement your idea. So that's always advantageous. But now the downside, or another pro actually, before I go to the downside, is that quite often these government grants give you a program where they're able to support you as you work on your idea with the funding they've just given you. But the downside to government grants is that they usually take very long to materialize, as is expected with the government. And there's usually a lot of applications, to be fair, as well. So they have to process those and go through all the checks and balances before they actually give you the funding. So this can take anywhere from 4 to 8 months, even a year at times. So you really don't want to be critically dependent on this form of funding. If you're going to go for government grants, I advise that you also go for startup competitions as well, or some other form of funding. Now, these are accessible to you once again in the idea stage of your business, but you're going to need to demonstrate that you've really thought about the problem. Once again, you've really thought about the solution and how you're actually going to implement it, because implementation plans, measurement of goals, all these are all things that are very important to these government agencies. So the fourth form of funding is angel investment. Now, angel investors are essentially high net worth individuals who like to take bets or make investments in early stage ideas or entrepreneurs. Now, these are people who usually come from a background where they've started and sold their own business, and they love the thrill of being involved in something in the early stages and trying to build it out. So there's a lot of benefits to this type of funding. Angel investors bring a wealth of knowledge and resources because they've actually built businesses themselves. But also beyond that, actually receiving investment from an angel investor is a great form of validation because it demonstrates that you've been able to convince someone to part ways with their own hard-earned money because of their belief in your idea. So it's a great form of validation. Now, the con behind this, or the risk to angel investment, is that it's not always easy to select the right angel investor. There are many people out there who have a lot of money and they're looking for good opportunities and ideas to back. But you want to ensure that you don't get the wrong one, because that can really be so detrimental to your business. Because when you bring on an angel investor, it's usually in the form of an equity investment. They want something in exchange for the risk that they're taking while your business is in the early stage, and that's usually equity. So you want to be very careful, and while they're vetting and doing due diligence on your idea and on you as an entrepreneur, you must also be doing due diligence on them. Are they the right investor? Are they, the kind of person that has, influence in the industry of your idea? Do they have access to knowledge? Do they have access to networks? Those are all the very important questions that you need to ask yourself. It's not just about money. Now, the right time to approach these guys is usually when you've actually validated your startup idea. So it is relatively early stage, but not as early stage as your startup competitions. And usually when you speak to them, you want to have done things like startup competitions or have tried to access government grants, because that all kind of tells a compelling story as to why your idea is worth backing with someone's personal money. So that's just a little bit of advice that I'll give you there. It's demonstrate validate your concept, get a little bit of traction, and you should be able to convince these guys. As to where you find them, I think that deserves a video of its own, so I'll definitely work on that. So the fifth and final form of funding is institutional funding. Now, this comes through the form of VCs or private equity firms. Now, these guys are usually equipped to invest in your business or your startup idea for growth. So you don't really consider them in the early stages. This is actually once you've got something live and operational out there and you want to scale it and take it to the next level. Now, the pro of VC funding or private equity funding is that it comes with a lot of backing. Usually the amount of funding that they put in your business is pretty high, typically between 5 million all the way up to hundreds of millions of rands, dollars in the States. So there's really no limits to this form of funding. And the beauty of it is that it comes with, the support of this huge kind of institution. And usually these kind of institutions have dealt with other startups, in different industries, and some perhaps even in the same industry that you're operating in. And that knowledge and access to networks and all that learning can actually really help in terms of building your business and taking it to the next level. Now, the con of this form of funding is that it's usually very restrictive on the entrepreneur. And at this point, you've introduced a lot of admin and reporting that you actually need to do on a month-by-month basis. So from that perspective, it can be a bit distracting. But also as well, the other con is that this form of funding is usually very expensive, and they will usually take a huge portion of the business. And if you haven't been smart in terms of how you've raised investment to this point, you'll usually dilute your shareholding to the extent where you may not even be in control anymore, which definitely puts you at risk of being replaced or being fired. These are some of the realities if you don't actually perform as an entrepreneur when you've got VC funding. But hey, that is business, and that's how things work. And it's a good motivation for you to actually stay on top of your game as an entrepreneur. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is not early stage funding. You have to have demonstrated that you have validated your concept. You've also validated your business model. You've got customers that you're actively serving, and you just want to scale your operations up and either grow your team and access new territories. Those are the kind of things that you go and get venture funding for. So in summary, you have 5 avenues that are available to you as an entrepreneur for funding. First of all, it's friends and family. Then you've got your startup competitions, government grants, and then you start to consider your angel investors and then your VCs. Now, you want to try and knock on each of these doors in the order of the list that I've actually presented. You don't want to go to your angel investors before you've tried startup competitions, because startup competitions give you the validation that helps you, get the angel investment a lot easier. And by the time you go to, your institutional investors, your VCs, if you've got, both startup competitions under your belt, you've got angel investors on your shareholding of your business, it all proves or tells a story that is quite compelling, that you've been able to take a lot of people along with you on this journey to where you are today, and your idea or your business is worth investing in. Alright, so that's it for this video. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you did, please hit that thumbs up icon. And if you want to know when I speak about more of these topics in later videos, please subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so that you receive that notification. And tell a friend and tell an entrepreneur that you know about the channel. Let's build one another up so that we are all informed about how to do this thing.